In today's video, we'll explore three characters. One is a monster, one is a victim, and one is a bit of both. Hello everyone, my name is Ethan, or Ethan Says Stuff, and today we'll be saying some stuff about how the horror genre loves to blur the line between who we should fear and who we should fear for. But how do you handle a character who commits horrific acts without losing the audience's empathy? Today, we're looking at three horror icons and breaking down the difference between victim, antagonist, and villain. Luckily, we don't have to look too far back, as Obsession earlier this year brought us Nikki, who notoriously brought the debate if she was truly the villain of the movie or not, which we should know the answer to by now, but we'll get back to that later. This debate has even sparked up again in a different font, as Halloween Horror Nights this year has announced that we will have Nikki as a wandering character in the park, and the likes of art that we had last year, but again, we'll roll back into that later. Starting with one of everybody's favorite slashers, we have Jason. While Jason originated as a victim in the Friday the 13th franchise by drowning in the lake due to the neglect of the counselors, he ends up returning and immediately gets to slashing all those pesky kids that are reminders of the fate that he was given. Jason goes through a victimizing event, but this does not necessarily justify him making the decision to go kill all the people he does throughout the franchise. By Jason actively making the decision to continue killing people, it makes him function as both the antagonist and the iconic villain of the franchise. Hell, there's a reason you could go into any Halloween store and find him to some capacity. Next, we take a trip back to 1976 as we shift to Carrie. Carrie actually functions as our protagonist of the movie, with our antagonist being her mother and the bullies, but as the movie progresses, we get to Carrie's breaking point. At the prom, Carrie suffers from a psychological breakdown and kills everyone, which obviously is the most iconic scene in the movie. She didn't actually make the decision to kill the people directly, which makes it a bit up to the viewer's decision if she enters the role of the villain, or rather she's more tragic protagonist. And I also hope that the new series will actually be good. We obviously saw the first looks at it earlier this year, but this is not a discussion video for that. And lastly, we will roll into our most recent example and the biggest example of why I wanted to make this video. Spoilers if you somehow haven't seen it yet. But Obsession's Freaky Nikki, or just Nikki, whatever you want to call her, who's attached to the argument that has been beaten to a pulp over the past few months.
No. 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 No.
What?
No. 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 Don't do that! I thought we were having a nice day.
We are.
But Nikki functions as a supporting character for the movie up until the point when she's affected by the One Wish Willow, shifting her into an antagonistic role for the movie, not the villain. Now this is where it gets very important to understand the difference in these definitions. An antagonist, according to Google, is a person, group, or force that goes against the main character. This opposition creates conflict and tension. While often thought of as the bad guy, an antagonist can be anything that blocks the main character from reaching their goal, compared to a villain, who is a bad person who breaks the law, does evil things on purpose, or acts as the main enemy to a hero in a book, movie, or play. The word can also describe any person or thing that causes a problem or harm. So while Nikki isn't the villain in the movie, she does function as the antagonist, with her being the scary force, even as far as killing, as we see in the movie. Bear fundamentally, though, is our villain in the story. Again, as I noted earlier, very obvious by now if you've seen the movie, and that shouldn't be an argument at all. He still serves as our protagonist throughout the movie. Now, tying this into our Halloween Horror Nights argument, sides are fighting if it's immoral to put Nikki as the scary character or not, but in the context of the movie, she literally does function as the horror force, and a lot of people have gotten sucked into the idea of something bad in horror is too far, or kind of the term I've been seeing thrown around a lot is nuance, which I think is fitting as well. I think this movie just got really big with the 4 movies a year crowd, and a lot of people are kind of treating it like their first horror movie. Some people are low-key treating it like it's a real event that happened. And yes, some of these events are very real things that do happen to people, but obviously not to the extent of what happens in this movie. And I feel like that really needs to get into people's heads when they're talking about what actually occurs in this movie, because Nikki ends up functioning as both our antagonist and the victim due to everything that happens to her being against her will in the movie. And in the context of Horror Nights, we have, for example, we had the Five Nights at Freddy's children's souls that possess the animatronics last year, who were children that were slaughtered, obviously making them the victims, but functionally, in the context of both the games, the movie, anything, they are the antagonistic force against our protagonist, which in the movie was Josh Hutcherson. So I feel like if people want to uphold the argument to the same degree they're trying to here, then they should be more consistent, because why do we draw the line at what I guess you could call more realistic events or more extreme? I guess it's just a very interesting point that a lot of people are arguing about, where I don't really know where they're trying to draw the line at, because I think they're kind of viewing it in a similar sense to how Disneyland has the Oogie Boogie Bash, where it's like strictly villains. Horror Nights has never strictly been a villains event where it's like a celebration of horror villains and anything of that sort. It's more a celebration of horror and an event to celebrate horror and its success and all the iconic moments and series franchises that we have gotten out of it. And even like I noted earlier with Jason, we had him as the Halloween Horror Nights house last year, and nobody said anything about that, but that was about a kid drowning. And yes, this is a far more extreme situation, but these are both tragic, victimizing events that have happened to these characters. And to a degree, I potentially find it even worse that we're just boiling down her character to simply a victim, when it'll be the same people talking about, oh, like she wanted to be a writer so bad, like she's such a tragic character. But then when it comes to all these discussions, we're just boiling her down to the fact that she's a victim and she shouldn't be included in the event. And I just kind of find that really odd. My personal solution to this was to potentially even cater to both sides by including a bear actor at the event, cover him in blood based on his appearance towards the end of the movie, give him the bottle of pills as the kind of bean can trick that scare actors will utilize to scare the guests, and maybe even give him a One Wish Willow prop to kind of run around waving guest faces like he did with Ian at the end, and kind of just run up and be in people's faces and scare them and stuff. And then you can also partner this with the Nikki character to follow around Bear in a general vicinity to better flesh out the obsession theming as she hunts for Bear through the crowds. And to address a bigger concern, I think it could also even potentially help out with security issues that could come alongside the character, as she would always have somebody in close enough proximity in case a guest oversteps bounds, especially in the event that security cannot reach the actress due to the crowds, as I guarantee she's going to be hugely popular like Art the Clown was last year, had crowds waving around him, but they still managed to work around that. But that's definitely where my biggest concern comes from, is the actress's safety from guests, because I have seen stories online before where these guests will do crazy shit to these actors, and it's not okay, and I definitely feel like it's going to get ruined for everybody by doing so, which I do think that's a valid concern, which is why I bring up some of these alternative options of sorts. But even if Universal doesn't go with that approach, they can be just fine without Bear, as guests will just serve the role of Bear, as Nikki randomly chooses guests to be obsessed with or chase them down of sorts, like we had with Art last year. Again, not sound like a broken record, but he was doing a similar thing whenever I was at the park. He would pick a certain guest and just follow them around if they visibly were fearing him coming near them or anything of the sorts. But generally, I find the obsession or Nikki inclusion to be such an awesome last minute thing by Universal, with Indy Never Ready potentially even getting back into the role herself during some of the event nights, in a similar sense to we had with Johnny Depp for the Pirates of the Caribbean rides at Disneyland. And I'm super stoked for Halloween Horror Nights this year. I have a bunch of content being planned for the coverage of the event, so be sure to subscribe to be in the loop for that. Turn on notifications as well. And make sure to check me out on the other socials, as I'll be keeping more updates on there as well. So Nikki ultimately does follow the victimized antagonist role to a T, as all of her actions are against her own will, and when she inevitably does break out of it, she is immediately shown horrified at the actions she's committed to her and her friends. But as we come to a close, I hope this has helped provide a better understanding to a character's roles in movies, such as protagonists being the villain, antagonists even being the victims in some cases. I feel like it's something we definitely need to understand about this whole argument as well. Universal isn't trying to say that she's the villain of the movie by putting her as a character. It's merely for the horror experience, because in the movie she serves as the horror force. But how do you feel about the inclusion of Obsession at Horror Nights? Let me know down below. Again, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this small analysis, and as always, be sure to check out my other socials. Thank you all so much for your support, and until next time, peace.